Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, former installation contractor and boutique store owner. Joining me this week is John Cox of Cox Tile in San Antonio, Texas. And we're going to be talking about lifelong learning. This is something that some of us struggle with. I did personally. I finished school. I never really liked it. And I went years of not wanting to read books, look into different topics and pick up a new hobby or skill because it wasn't for me. And it wasn't really until I fell into the flooring industry that I dove into wanting to learn more about business, more about installation techniques, dorking out on the science of like the light science of how, the chemical reactions affect things and why the relative humidity and flooring matters, right? And subfloors, all that kind of stuff, right? But it was as I gained that, I started to change my business. And John's got an absolutely great story of how he grew Cox Tile into a 5-star accredited national tile contracting business, highly recognized in San Antonio and beyond that, with awards and other accolades for projects that he and his company have accomplished. But none of it would have happened until he learned how to get out of his own way and become a better leader for his team. And so that started, he's been going around in many of the online Facebook groups. And I want to say he's at like book 48, 49, 50 now or so. He's posting like 1 or 2 a week of all of these different books that he's read. And it's been absolutely fascinating to kind of, read through the posts, go through some of the pictures, pick up on some of the quick bites that he's sharing of the different things he's learned. And I thought it would be fun to dive into more of that. That's why Floor Academy is here, is that we want to make sure that you're more profitable, more efficient, you're a better leader, right? That your business becomes easier, not harder for you to manage. And this is how you have to do it. You got to go spend the time after hours, after you're on that floor 8-10 hours a day, after you've gone and done the bid, after you've come home and dealt with the wife and the kids and done dinner and read the books to the littles and put them to bed. You got to put in the extra time. Otherwise it's not going to happen. And so we're going to dive into that. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it, and then we'll dive into this lifelong learning and kind of where you got your passion for it.
Best, my name is John Cox from Cox Tile in San Antonio. Started in the tile business back in 1975. So I've been involved in the industry for quite a few years. It's been exhilarating. It's been fun. Obviously, there are times when it's been pretty tough, and those are all life learning experiences that that help you to get through. We have not been through an economic downturn of any significance for the last 20 years, and I've been through, back in the 70s, there was a significant, change in the economy, went to crap. And then did so in the 80s and in the 90s, and surviving those things was a learning experience to try to figure out what was going to be the best outcome. And each one creates its own set of challenges, and you learn each time what to do, kind of what not to do, and then what you have to do on the fly. And it's been, I've got story after story. Anybody that knows me knows that, I've always got a story about something, just because it's involvement with so many people over the years. And it really all started, I wanted to go to college and become a wildlife biologist. And there weren't any jobs back then. A lot of people don't know that there was a guy named Richard Nixon as president, and put a freeze on all the government jobs. And all these, and when I was going to college, all these graduates were hanging around. It's like, how come you guys aren't working? And they said, we can't find a job. So I went to the dean of the forestry school. I'm the type that's going to be, when everybody's in a room and teacher asks a hard question and nobody answers, but they want to, I'm the one that raised my hand And I went to the dean of the forestry school and I said, what are my chances? He asked me, he goes, what can I do for you? And I said, I've got one question for you. What are my chances of getting a job that I graduate, whether it be 4, 5, 6 years from now? He said, not very good. And I was going to school in Nacogdoches, San Antonio, 6 hours, long ways away. The suitcase college, everybody went home. Everybody was from Dallas, Houston, went home on the weekend. So I said, I'm going back to San Antonio. I have no idea what the heck I want to do. My father was an iron worker, and I grew up in the construction business.
Okay.
And my mother worked for a home builder. And so I said, Mom, can you ask somebody, if I can work part-time while I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life? And she came back and she goes, the tile guy will hire you. It's like, tile? What the heck is tile? Well, it's bathrooms, countertops, floors. It's like, what the heck? I'll give it a shot. And again, I've worked every summer since I was 15 years old.
Okay.
And so I wasn't afraid of work. I played athletics, played football for 12 years. So, hard work, sacrifice, discipline, those weren't any big deal to me because I had done it, practiced it all my life, just doing those things. And so I started in tile, and the guy that I worked for actually helped me to become, in a business to a degree, because I was working he paid me as a subcontractor. So, there was no overtime. He said, if you can't work for this, you're going to have to work somewhere else. And I ended up working 50 hours a week and taking 12 hours of school. And that happened for 2.5 years until the economy picked up. And he said, and this is crazy, I was making like $4.50 an hour. I mean, it sounds pretty bad nowadays, but that was good money.
Yeah, for sure.
And he goes, I'll give you a dollar raise if you'll stick with it. And so it's like, man, I love what I do. I love working with my hands. The best thing is when somebody walks up afterwards, you finish the job and they say, you did a great job and here's a check for doing it. I mean, it just didn't really get any better than that. And then the struggles of starting my business. I was doing side jobs with a builder, became friends with.
Okay.
And he's started giving me side jobs. He goes, I've got a repair, I've got this. Are you interested in doing it? It's like, sure. Because I was not afraid to work, and making money was the fun part. And so I was never forget. I was working on a house one Sunday, and he goes, "Why don't you start your own business?" And I said, "Mike, security. I don't know anybody. What happens if I'm not successful?" And he goes, "You'll be surprised." He goes, "You're a hard worker. You'll be surprised at how many people the guy you're working for will follow you. And the people that we already have," he goes, "I've got enough to work to keep you and a helper busy for quite a while." So I went home, and it was my wife now, but girlfriend, and we talked about it. And I said, "What's the worst thing that can happen to me? If I fail, I go back to work for someone." So, that Monday, I gave the guy my 2 weeks notice and started my own business. And, one helper led to another helper led to 2, led to 3. And it just started real small. But again, I was setting tile. I set tile for 25 years. So, I know what tile, and I feel like I'm a pretty dadgum good tile setter, as well as a good motivator and teacher. That's what I love doing now with my guys is we spend a lot of times, all my guys are hourly. So they come in the morning and we talk about jobs, and one person may be working on a job, but the other one may not be working on a job, but the overlap of the conversation, they may learn something, and which is, again, that's fun doing. They may learn something and may not even be involved with that job.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a fun thing of, again, I get caught up in stories and talk too long. Cody goes, Dad, you got to let them go. They got to go work. And so that's fun to me.
No, I think I love employee model contracting businesses. I think it's the superior way to go over subcontractors. There's too much liability in trusting somebody with a work order to deliver on your name. And I don't think you get the awards and accolades and, you for sure can't be a 5-star recognized accredited contractor without having employees, because I, you, a subcontractor CTI doesn't count. So you'd never be able to do it. I think it's a great model. I love hearing that, you kind of like most of us, or all of us pretty much, you were encouraged to go out and do it, or you decided to go out and do it, and you just made that leap and made it work, and learned along the way. And so there's probably a lot of hard lessons in there. And I think that's what I'm kind of interested in, is because like you said, now is you're really into like the motivating and the leadership, but that's not generally where that journey begins. And there's a lot to get in place before you can truly focus on that, I think. And so, when we initially talked, you had mentioned, you'd done some books on tape and stuff, but when did when did you recognize that you couldn't just be a tile installer, and that you truly had a business and had to learn business? Like when did that picture come together?
That's a story, because when I first began, I was 22 years old. When I started my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And people wouldn't give. There was. This is what's crazy. It's hard to believe that there was no internet at that time. Cell phones were big bag phones. And then they were very expensive. Most of your calls were on pagers. Most people don't even know what a daggone pager is. But anyhow, when I first started,
you had stacks of quarters for the payphone on the corner.
Oh, absolutely. And it was such a pain to have to, every time somebody paid you, run to go answer their phone call, when instead of waiting until the end of the day saying, I'll call you at night. Builders always called in the morning and at night, because that's the only time they knew they could catch you to talk to you. But anyway, so there was no internet. And when I first started, I was having to meet people that had been in business for 20 years. And, people would pat me on the back and say, John, we'd love to work with you. We trust you. We believe in you. But we have to work with this company that's been in business for 20 years. And I got, it's so frustrating to say, dadgummit, I'm the better contractor, because this guy's been doing the same thing for the last 30 years and hasn't spent one dime on trying to better his business, or going to any seminars, or going to tile warehouses to learn things. And so that's when I joined. I remember Joe Tarver going around with his workshops, and it's like NTCA, and there were 3 magazines. There was nothing to really gain any knowledge. There were 3 magazines. One was Tile and Decorative Surfaces, one was CTIOA, which is California Newsletter, and also Tile Letter. And I remember Joe, and so it's like, I'm gonna look into the NTCA. So I looked into it and said, what a great place for knowledge. And now I can use that knowledge. Number one is I'm part of a contracting association that nobody else is. Number 2 is I can utilize that knowledge to my advantage and turn the tide on somebody where they say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. We want to use him instead of these other guys. And so that's when I joined and got involved with the NTCA. And you talk about, people talk about being flies on the wall. I learned more probably going to networking, sitting in a bar, listening to guys talk about their experiences and what they had done, over the years, and then take that back, and then being able to utilize it. And then also the networking, where people got to know me, I got to know them. They were in different cities, so I could call them and virtually ask them anything about a business where they didn't feel like they were competing against me, where they were giving a trade secret away or anything else. So, that, developed a tremendous amount of people, relationships, where I can pick up the phone and call anybody at any point, and they're going to give me, an answer. But if they don't know the answer, then I can call someone else. And that's what's fun about trying to help people. Jim Olson calls me every once in a while and says, hey, will you mentor this guy? He's looking for information. And I said, sure. But there's 2 things that I ask them to read before they start asking questions, because I don't want them to dive into it. And this is the book thing. One is Markup and Profit by Michael Stone, and also the E-Myth.
Yep.
Because the entrepreneurial myth, a lot of people don't understand what they're getting ready to get into. And if they read that book and it helps them with their journey, at least cuts down some of the learning curve part of it. Michael Stone, we hear all the time, we've talked about it. People posting on the internet, how much should I charge?
Yeah.
Well, what are your costs? How do you know what the how do you know that another guy is profitable? That's in another city, a different cost altogether, cost of living. So it's really, I get aggravated when people say, well, how much do you charge?
Yeah.
I ask home builders, how much you charge per square foot? Well, what do you want in a house? Same thing with a car. Well, do you want a radio? Do you want a special radio? You got to know what your costs are to come up with a price. And that led to the book thing. Again, there was no internet to draw this information from that a lot of people say, I'll just look it up on the internet. There was not this information. So we went skiing one time in Taos, New Mexico. And I'm a big hunter and a fisherman.
Okay.
So I'm tagging along with my wife, and she knows I'm bored stiff because there's no Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop, Sportsman's Warehouse. And she goes, obviously you're bored. Go do something. Get out of my hair. And so I walked down the street, and I love sports, love hunting and fishing, and photography. I love photography. And started walking around, and it's like, there's a tile book. It's like, tile? I didn't even know that these books were even made. And so I ended up buying a bag full of books, and I walked back, and she goes, what did you buy? And I said, I bought some books. She goes, how many? I said, $207 worth. She goes, oh my gosh. And that was the start of my library of, a couple of years ago, I introduced my books of tile because I've got two separate really libraries. I've got manufacturing of tile, who it's made by, installation of tile. Then the second part was my business part of it, that I wanted to bring out, and I did my tile books 2 years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago. And when Luke Miller had his tile money, I didn't want to conflict with him by putting out my library. And then when his thing kind of fizzled out, I said, what a great time to do it, because I can do it and try to bring benefit to the contractors that were just like me, that first started out, and again, a lot of life's learning experiences, and some are good and some are bad. I'll never forget, there was a time I was buying my first one-ton truck, and my stepfather was in an oil field business. And I asked him, I said, and he was a successful businessman. I said, Jack, what can you tell me about business that I don't have to learn the hard way? He thought for a minute. He goes, there's not a lot of things I can tell you what to do, but he goes, there's a hell of a lot of things I can tell you what not to do. And it just sunk in that, life is, I was trying to shorten that learning curve, and I going to all these shows. I can, I remember the first time I go into coverings and going to one of the seminars, and it was an accounting seminar, about business. And they started talking about P&L statements. I went crawling underneath the table because I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And here I was in business, but I didn't know. And it made me really, really ponder. It's like, I gotta get to know this stuff, in order to be successful. And that's when I started buying the different business books. And going to bookstores, most of them were geared towards general contracting or remodeling. Well, we're specialty contractors. And so there was very few books that were written that were really applicable, that I could take and say, okay, markup, profit, those things. Again, with the general contractor, they were just a different animal. And then there was two guys that I got to meet and got to know. One was a guy named Michael Stone, which I talked about his book. Yep. There was another guy, Charles Vanderkoop, the most dynamic speaker I've ever been to. I mean, he never made anybody comfortable with what he was talking about. but his information was just incredible. In fact, there was an article that I had a contractor, and the article was egg sucking dogs, and helped his business because he had an egg sucking dog working for him that was basically stealing from his business.
Mm-hmm.
And he's to this day, he goes, "You saved my business by providing me with that article to help identify what our problems were and to move forward." And little things like that have again, I've gotten a lot of satisfaction with helping people with those things. And I'm not going to go out and do things. I'm not going to force myself on someone, but if they ask
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm certainly willing to help.
No, I think that's the beauty of this is that once you, I think especially within the trades, right? A lot of tradespeople that are, I don't know, in the my age range and up and with you, we still had trades training in school, right? You could still do automotive or some kind of electrical or welding, or I had wood shop. There was stuff like that going on, but for many years, those kids were, oh, you're not good at school, go over here, go do this stuff. You're better over here, right? And you're told that you can't learn. And then they go out in the world and they're told, okay, well, you need to be a subcontractor, you need to start your own business, and they go and do it, but then they've been told they can't learn, right? And so now they're turned off by it. They don't want to go do it. And so that offer of like, hey, I'll help you as long as you ask is a great one. But I think that's where it starts is I was kind of that way. I got sick of school. I didn't want to do anything. And until I found something that I was absolutely passionate about and interested in, and then I had the ability, because the internet now, I could teach myself. That was the change for me. There wasn't a test. There wasn't any grades. There wasn't something that I had to show up to. I could do it on my own time the way I wanted to and learn. And if I had to watch the same video 10 times to understand a concept, that was okay. There wasn't anyone judging me or giving me a hard time. But it was, I got to make the rules. And that's what helped me. And then as I got into it and it started expanding my brain and knowing more, I had to know more at that point. There was no turning it off anymore because the whole new world had been opened up to me. And I think that's the struggle, is how do we get folks over that initial, like, they're just turned off by it. And so,
it starts with education. And when we first started, again, you put an ad in the paper, and that was when ads were effective in the paper,
mm-hmm.
seeking someone that wanted to work in construction, wanted to work in trades. Then we got involved with there was a trades high school that had a masonry class in it.
Mm-hmm.
We got involved with that, and then the masonry, those were electives, and so money was not thrown a lot towards these programs. And then when school got tight on funding, then they eliminated them.
Yep.
And then now the big push has been, hey, we need to get everybody. Number one, college is too expensive. Number two, these people that get out, just like the student debt that they've accumulated, some of them can't get a job to pay their debt. And so,
yep.
The movement has finally kind of turned a little bit to say, okay, if you're not going to go to college, now let's push you in a direction with trades in schools where there are 2 or 3 or 4 year programs where these kids go and they have an avenue instead of just discarded afterwards. The people that didn't go to school, you were kind of discarded to a degree, because it's like, well, they're not a college graduate. That means that they can't do anything. And that's where, it's like, BS. We're going to prove you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a viable trade, even though the tile trade, to me, it's kind of looked like the black sheep of the industry, because people, it's beautiful, they see it, unless you do something really, really artistic, A 3-wall shower is just like, okay, I'm taking a shower. It's just containing the water. That's all there is. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I focused on, I knew early on that I had to do something to be different. And, I set out to trying to do the most difficult, challenging jobs, but yet they were the most rewarding because when you got done with something, it's like, wow, I was a piece of that. I put that
Hmm.
together. Um, and that's one thing that the drive, it's nice to get recognition for what we do. I mean, the awards, it's very competitive. I'll beat you at tiddlywinks if we play. Um, and I'll beat you badly. I won't beat you, just barely beat you. Um, and there's times when I got my tail kicked just from friends. But anyhow, the award part of it, you got to do something to separate yourself from the
Hmm.
next guy. And whether it be awards, whether it be knowledge, those are things that you have to do to if you're going to be successful. If you're like everyone else, you have to charge like everyone else. It's people as intelligent as they are like cattle. And of course, Texas, we see a lot of cattle all the time. And a cow will walk down the same path, and there'll be 10 right behind them, and they have no idea number 10 is what the heck where number one is going, but they're just in line.
Hmm.
And for the most part, that's what people do. And it's like, you know what? No, we're going to be our own person. We're going to do our own thing, and we're gonna outwork the next guy. We're going to outthink the next guy. Um, and and not in a bragging way, um, but we're within our company. That's what we're going to set out to do. I mean, we have Monday morning meetings with our employees every morning. Everybody comes to the shop in the morning.
Okay.
Every we don't employ subcontractors, and so we're very proud of our team, and we're very happy. Their happiness is important to us, and we spend a lot more time teaching our people. All our tile setters are CTIs.
Okay.
Um, we invest in our people, and again, that you've got to create differentiation whenever you're in business. And the books, getting back to the books, that was one way of learning knowledge where we could take that and apply it. And whether it
Hmm.
be business or whether it be, I love geometry. That's one of the reasons probably I love this business, is because it's all geometry.
Okay.
Anything above that I didn't excel at, but geometry I loved. I mean, doodled all through school, and boxes and circles and stars and those things. And that's there's a book called Tile Setting Workbook that was put out by the Department of Education, California Department of Education, that is I've had it as long as I've been in business. And the math in it is incredible, doing arches,
Okay.
uh, trapezoids, domes, circular showers. When somebody says I got a circular shower, it's like, bring it on, because we
Mm.
know how to do it.
Okay.
And that's one of the things, again, people say, oh, you're a dinosaur. We still do mud work on all of our walls and floors.
Okay.
And uh, people say, well, they don't pay us enough. The thing is, you have to educate your customer and what the difference is and why you do it.
Hmm.
And that's what's important, is educating your customer and knowing that, okay, you might spend a little bit more money, but you're going to get something that's going to last for life. And that's one of our
Yes.
sayings, is we build a tile job for life. We don't build it for 15 minutes or 15 miles, whichever comes first. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are just in it for money, and that's really they're not going to be around them.
Hmm.
We this will be my 50th year coming up. Next year will be my 50th year of being in the industry. And again, I love what I do.
Yeah.
People say, when are you going to retire? They're going to take my truck and put it in an incinerator with me in it, uh, and then scatter my ashes over the mountains of Colorado. But I don't plan on retiring. I'm going to be a thorn in Cody's side, and he'll probably think that, but at some point in time, I want to move over and let him do his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's been part of the NTCA, been a part of that. I've been a part of that since 1985 is when I became a member. And there are emerging leaders that I got to get out of the way and let them lead. Because I don't want to be the guy that's in the way saying, this guy just is a hanger-oner. I love contributing, and it's hard to get out of the way, but I know that I have to let these guys do their thing.
I think that's a huge thing to recognize, is that there's a time and a place for you, and then things change and they evolve, and it's time to let somebody else come in and have some new ideas. And I don't know that comes through not being the knowledge thirsty man that you've become, right? I think if you weren't reading books, if you weren't trying to get educated, if you weren't having discussions with other business owners about how they do it, why they do it, and that wouldn't have come, right? It would be like, nah, I built this, it's mine. Like, you can't have it, you're going to ruin it. I think you stay a lot more closed-minded any other way. And so it's interesting to hear. I want to dig into a little bit about your employees and how you get them to be thirsty for knowledge. Because obviously, like you said, you're having meetings and things like that. And so you're getting them interested and excited about learning and growing as setters. And so I want to dig into a little bit of that. I got to interrupt us real quick, though. Got a couple of quick ads, and then we will jump right back into it.
Okay.
Attention flooring professionals, elevate your craftsmanship with the finest tools and supplies from tiletools.com. From spacers to saws, we have everything you need for flawless tile installations. Plus, we offer top-notch customer service and fast shipping. As a special offer for Floor Academy listeners, you can use the code FA10 at checkout to save an additional 10%. Don't settle for less. Visit tiletools.com today and experience the difference that quality and I can do this. Visit tiletools.com today and experience the difference in quality and service that professionals trust. Oh, man. All right. Getting tongue-tied here. Utzen has your floor installation needs covered with our extensive range of high-quality products. Whether it's our moisture mitigation system for concrete slabs, subfloor preparation products, tile and stone installation systems, our tooling, we have solutions for your project. We also provide expert guidance to help you choose the right solution, as well as technical support for your project. Learn more by visiting our website, social media, through our app, or contacting your local rep. You can learn more at www.utzen.com. I highly recommend the app. It makes your life so much easier, and they've got lots of really great calculators on there, and you can download all of the TDS sheets, which we know if we're dorking out about education, go read the TDS sheet and actually know how to use the damn product. I don't care what product we're using. Just go read the TDS sheet and read the instructions. They're really important, I promise. All right. John, I want to jump into learning about your employees here. So you've got employees instead of subcontractors, which again, I think is super awesome. How have you encouraged them to become learners, and how do you interview for that? I think a lot of guys and gals struggle to find the right type of person that will be excited to gain more knowledge.
Well, it's all about fits, whether they fit our philosophy, they fit our program. And so the very first thing we do, obviously, is try to get someone in. And then we have basically 3 questionnaires. And some of those questions are, that may be related to, and again, I'll go back to the 3. We have tile setter questionnaire. We have a helper that, has experience, and then someone that has no experience. Mm-hmm. And so I have questions. Some of them are psychological. Some are, say the one that doesn't have any experience at all. What athletics have they played? What type of organization have they done? What type of trucks can they, have they driven? To find out whether they're going to, be a good fit in attitude. When they come in, if they've got a poor attitude, I'm sorry, it's not gonna be a good
Hmm.
fit. You know, I can't teach attitude, but I can teach time.
Yeah.
And so, right away, if they come in and are eager and want to learn, we try to give them as much information as we possibly can. And, if we have a tile setter that may have worked for someone else, we know that the habits they may have are using or utilizing, some of them may be good, some of them may be bad, but I call it reprogramming.
Hmm.
And so it's a trust thing that we're going to build and spend time saying, okay, you may have done it this way, but this is how we do it. And so I try to put them with a tile setter that is going to teach our way. And it takes a while before the guy finally breaks down and says, hey, your way's better. Well, that's the reason why we're doing it. We're not doing it because we want to agonize you, but
Hmm.
our philosophy and how we do things has been successful. And if you want to be a part of our team, then that's what's going to take. But the questionnaire is really where it starts, because again, we find out whether their personality is going to work. What kind of what they look like. I mean,
Yeah.
we're working in high residential. We've got to be careful about people that don't look like someone's going to trust them in their home.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's we give all of our guys a Cox Styles t-shirt, a blue shirt, and I don't give them out to anybody. They're if they wear the shirt, they're employees, because I've had people, hey, give me one of your shirts. Nope, I'll give you one of my caps, but not one of my shirts. And everybody on the
Got it.
job site, when that blue shirt arrives, they know that it's who we are, because we've got our logos on the front and typically the back,
Hmm.
and we're very proud of that. And people identified saying, hey, the guys wearing blue shirts, that's Cox Style. And that's it's the blue. I realized recognize branding was really really important early on in my career, because again, it was, you got to differentiate yourself
Hmm.
from your competitors. And how are you going to do it? Everybody, oh, I do quality work. What is quality? What does that represent? It's doing the little things. It's not doing the big things,
Yeah.
because I tell my guys as I'm teaching them, I said, there's good tile setters, there's great tile setters, and there's elite tile setters. Elite means they are doing everything perfectly all the time. And I up until about 5 years ago, I didn't realize that elite existed.
Okay.
And so, it's like, okay, you're a good tile setter, but you're not a great tile setter. What do you mean? Well, these are the things you need to work on to move to that next level. And I've had guys that were elite tile contractors or tile setters. I think at last count, I had 14 or 15 guys that used to work for me that have their own business, that
Hmm.
started out and doing their own thing.
Okay.
And proud of that fact. Some we compete with, some we don't. But they used to work for me, and they went through the whole program, and hopefully they're teaching the same thing to the people that they hire. And there was a guy, he goes, now I know where those tentacles started, because he goes, I was working, he talked to different people, and they said, well, that guy used to work for you, that guy used to work for you, that guy used to work for you. And now I know where it all started from, because I met
Okay.
him, and he goes, okay, now I know. um, but again, it's all part of the sharing part, but again, it's all about fits. If the
Okay.
guy doesn't fit, then again has a bad attitude, he may be a great tile setter, but it's not going to work
Hmm.
out. A lot of
How,
times they think that they're smarter than I am, and it's like, you
yeah.
know that it's just not going to work.
How long did that lesson take to learn, right? You got nearly 50 years in business. Next year's 50 years. And I mean, you talked at the beginning, it was like, oh, I hired one apprentice, I hired another apprentice, I hired another apprentice. We grew. And that makes it sound, that's way too simplified, because I know it's not that simple. And so these days you have a hiring process in place. You've developed a company culture, and there's a way to be held accountable. But at one point it was John and another guy on the tools. And then maybe you were running three people on one project, or you got somebody up and you had you and a guy on a project, and somebody else was off running a second project somewhere else. But how were you vetting guys in the early days, right? Like, what's kind of changed? Where did the books play a role in really developing out what you have now, as opposed to where you probably started? Because I got a feeling that there wasn't a lot of interviewing in the early stages.
No, there wasn't. When you hired somebody, it's like, okay, if they lasted a week, it's like, okay, we may have a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
Going through the process, and some we were challenging. I wasn't the easiest person to work for, because I was a hard worker, and if they didn't work as hard as I did, then we might have a problem. Because again, setting tile, it was just like you said earlier. It was long days. I'd have to go home and do paperwork at night, or in the morning, and then go out and set tile. It was challenging, and
Mm-hmm.
and guys, again, trying to find out what their philosophy was, and trying to teach them. The books came in for leadership. I've tried to break that up where you had leadership and business books, but leadership was working with people. But the good thing is, what I attribute most of my part in that aspect was from athletics,
Okay.
because athletics, you had to be disciplined, you had to sacrifice, and you work your fanny off, and you got yelled at, sometimes warranted, sometimes unwarranted. But those are all that translated into the construction business, where that part was kind of easy because I was already used to all that. And I think that a lot of people, if you play an Xbox and then all of a sudden you start in business, you're not subjected to that. So
Mm-hmm.
the first time somebody yells at you, you know they crawl in a hole, and that's understanding, again, the process of a person's mind is, some you yell at, they crawl in a hole. Some you yell at, they get it challenges them and they rise to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
The other guys you yell at and they crawl in a hole. Now, okay, I've got to treat them with, a little bit different, not quite as harsh. Again, I've never professed to be the easiest person to work for. I call myself passionately intense, uh, and people that
Love
know
it.
me know that how blunt I am. You ask a buddy of mine, he goes, if you ask him a question, be prepared for the answer, because you may like it, you may not like it, but he's going to tell you what he's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's been no secret to that. You get back to trade schools and stuff nowadays. I'm kind of coming back around. One of the persons that's really been an advocate for our trade is Mike Rowe. And
Yeah,
people,
definitely.
who's Mike Rowe? Mike Rowe from
Dir-
Dirty
Dirty jobs.
Jobs,
Yeah.
and also the King Crab show.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he's been phenomenal when it comes to trying to educate people on the value of the trades, and knowing that people are not going to go to college. Everybody's not going to go to college and be, you know, and really do something they may not even like or making a lot of money. But the trades are fulfilling, and actually, the trades can be, you can make good money
Oh yeah.
by getting in the trades, and depends on which avenue you take. Um, you can make a really darn good living for your family, but you're going to work your fanny off if you're going to be successful. If
Yes.
people get into this business, say, I'm not successful, I'm waiting for that day to come. Well, it may never come, because if you don't put the effort into it, you're not going to get it out back out of it.
Yes. Definitely. And I agree. You will work your butt off, but that doesn't mean that it's not easy. I think a lot of people associate, you know, working hard makes it difficult, but that I don't think that's the case, right? Like I think once you learn a trade, it becomes pretty easy, right? You get used to it. It's, can I sustain the day in and day out grind to make this happen? And then, like
Well,
yourself,
there,
you had to go and get an education to become successful, right? It's like I said at the beginning, Just because you learn the hand skills and then you go and open a business doesn't mean that you can run a business well. It just means that you can set tile or install hardwood or carpet or whatever, go be an electrician, a plumber, whatever it is, right? You can do that well, but just because you do it well doesn't mean that you can run a profitable, functioning business. And they're two different skill sets.
That's where the E-Myth comes in, because not only the E-Myth is basically a story about a gal that was a baker,
yeah,
and started becoming wanted to open up a bakery business because she was tired of making the person that she was working for all the money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she opened up a bakery shop. Then she realized, hey, I got to go sell this. Now I got to do the paperwork part of it.
Yeah.
And I've got to deal with people. Oh, I got to go cook cakes and put them out every day. And then, those little 8-hour days end up being 16-hour days, and they're repetitive. I mean, you got to be, I don't think that you have to be great at necessarily everything, but you got to be darn good at, when it comes to how you treat your employees or how you educate your employees, go selling a job, collecting on a job. The one guy, Mike, Charles Vanderkoo, that I went to, I'll never forget this. Part of his seminar, he was in there, you guys do the riskiest business out there. And, people said, what do you mean? He goes, you do a job with the hope that you're going to get paid. There's no guarantee that you're going to be paid. So you have the hope that you're going to get paid. And which is true, because it's, there are times when it's funny how it works. There's times when you think that a customer is going to be, hey, this customer is going to be easy to work for, all the different stages get to the end up being sometimes the biggest pains in the rear, and the ones that I mean, that they're interviewing or trying to propose, doing a job. You say, man, this guy's really going to be difficult to work for. They end up being sometimes the easiest to work for, and the funnest part. One of the great things is going to a grocery store and walking up and saying, a customer will say, hey, you did my tile job, and become lifelong friends.
Yeah.
That, I'm going to call you the next time I have tile. I'm going to call you. We try to do it for life, and so we kind of screw ourselves because we're doing it to where it's not something we're going to redo 5 years from now or 10 years from now, until fashions change and all. It's like, okay, I need an update. We got to tear this out. And that's, that's the part that, each job now, we're trying to develop friendships and relationships where somebody says, hey, this guy did a great job. Let me refer him to your job. And this is why you have to use this guy. And that's part of it. We don't want them to use us. They have to use us, because if they don't, then that chances are they might end up having to hire us to do it a second time. And that's never a good situation for anybody when a customer's all hacked off, because, somebody did a bogus job, and we're end up fixing it. Because a lot of times we'll go to a job and they say, hey, we need for you to take this job over. Nope, we're not going to take it over. Yeah. We got to start from the very beginning and tear it out and redo it.
Yep.
Well, why? They've gotten to this stage. Number one is, if we finish that job, now we put our name on it. And if there's problems, no matter what stage it was, if we started at stage 7 to finish stage 8, if stage 2 was incorrect, we now bought that job.
Yep.
And so, they don't want to hear that, but we stick to our guns and just say, sorry, you made a poor choice. And it's unfortunate, but if you want us to do the job, here's what it's going to take to do it.
Well, I think that's a higher level business skill, sadly. Like, it shouldn't be, but I think it is. And we were just talking about it in last week's episode too, is I don't think that there's enough owners out there that truly calculate liability and what it means to touch a project or take on a project, or how do I make sure that if something goes wrong a year down the road, 2 years down the road, how do I save the money up to be able to afford that, right? What has to come out of each project in order to cover potential risk? Not that I think anyone out there that's listening to the show has a very high failure rate. I would hope most of us are 1% or less, but 1% is still a risk, right? And how do you cover that? But that's not, I think there's too many folks that are still in that project to project mindset and way of doing business, because they're not spending the time reading the books, getting the education. It's just, how do I go sell this next shower, this next floor, so I can feed my family? And then they're getting paid, they're paying the bills, and then they're right back to, oh, I got to get another one.
One thing,
was it ever like that for you? And then like the books kind of helped, or were you pretty, it sounds like you were fairly steady on work, at least in the beginning, because of the builder, but it was, I think there's still a struggle in that.
Well, there was always, we're in a relationship business,
Mm-hmm.
and live and die with referrals. And referrals are, we don't go out and spend a lot of money advertising. Probably 90% or higher is we're in a referral business where people we want to do a job where it's right. And you're right. We have, knock on wood, very few callbacks. When we get done with the job, we punch it out. Where the builder, we just did a job that was a $400,000 job. There were 3 items for a punch list on that big of a job. And that's what we pride ourselves on. It's going back, and instead of saying, okay, we're done, and not ever really scrutinize it, we go and scrutinize it to say, okay, we might have missed this. Mr. Builder, we're now done. And so that way they can do their scrutinization. But we want to make sure that list is minor, if non-existent. We caulk all of our changes of plane. We follow the TCNA handbook and the ANSI handbook. I'm really involved with, the NTCA technical committee. So, there is no excuse for not having the ability to do it. It's just executing it. And that's one thing that I've done with Cody. Cody has just, been like a sponge to all these different books. He's set very little tile, and he's going to run a different business than what I have. But he's extremely knowledgeable, and knowing what I know, and I'm trying to, before I get abducted by aliens, which I hope that's not anytime soon. But the books, getting back to the books, I won't say that I've read every single one of them. I've looked at, thumb through and read as many subjects as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And utilize that, and you try to say, okay, wow, I can use that in this situation. I can use that process. I can use that philosophy. I can, even when it comes to dealing with customers, get back to Michael Stone. He's got 2 books that are extremely valuable. And I tell people this, and I'm not kidding around, and Michael and I are good friends, but I tell people, if they don't think it's the best business books they've ever read, I'll buy them back from them. Without question. I'll give them the money for the book, without question. And I don't get a dime from Michael for doing so. But I truly believe that for a contractor that's growing up in the business, he's got markup and profit and profitable sales. And profitable sales handle part of the sales process. It gives you scenarios where, if you you go up to a customer and you give them an estimate, the husband's not there and the wife's there. Generally I have to talk to my husband before we can give you a decision. And there's a bunch of different scenarios. I'm getting, one of them is I'm getting 3 bids. How many times do we hear this? The homeowner throws that, we're getting 3 bids, and if you're the lowest, we're going to go with you. That's not really the best scenario. The best scenario is, okay, we're getting 3 bids. We want to be first because we want to set the tone for what everybody else has to live up to say, well, he didn't do what they said. He didn't do what they're going to do. And so, that's a great article that I use. Here another thing is I got to be competitive. No, you don't have to be competitive. You got to be profitable, because if you're not profitable, the other guy, maybe on a sinking ship, you want to get on board and sink with him. So, and some of the best word is no. Knowing when to walk away from a job and say, you know what, this is not a great fit. It's just not going to work for us, in doing this job. Whether you make up and say, well, it won't fit our schedule, or you just flat say, this job isn't going to work. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and you go on. You never want to leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth about it. But there, those are different things. Articles that Michael Stone has, I probably have learned more from his books than all the other ones put together, because there are so many different scenarios and subjects that can help a person, immediately if they go to that subject.
Yeah.
Because again, the E-Myth, we're so many different things, and you have to be pretty darn good at all of them if you're going to be successful. If you're weak in one, if you're weak in sales, well, your business, you're not going to get much business.
Yeah.
If you're weak in the bookkeeping part of it, you do all the work in the world. But if you don't make enough money to cover your overhead and pay your taxes and pay your employees, you won't stay in business.
Yeah.
And we've all heard horror stories where a lot of people, they are poor businessmen. The guy that I started with was a great tile setter, and I learned how to set tile from him. But was a very, very poor businessman, and he's still struggling to this day. And I'm not saying we're, I got a lot of the mountain to climb before I say I've got it made. I'm not. One of the things that I never was focused on money. Mine was building a business that would be around, that other people could cling to and hang on, saying, I want to be a part of that. And that's what I feel like we've built, and the guys working for us have, again, we're very proud of them and what they do every day, and thankful for what they do every day.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think you build that without, obviously you're making money, but you weren't, the main focus wasn't making money, and it wasn't about putting it in your pocket. It was about reinvesting it into the company and other people in order to grow it. And then that in turn should pay dividends in the long run, but it's a way better way to go. And I think it's, you're talking about wearing a lot of hats, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize when they go to start the business, and you're making a lot of really great points. Knowing sales, right? The minute you opened a business, you became a salesperson, whether you like it or not. For a long time, I had the biggest, no, I don't do sales. I hate sales. I'm not a salesman. Well, you own a business. And so if you want to be able to make money in your business, if you want to be your business to survive, you have to make sales. And if you're the only person in that business, you're a salesperson. Call yourself whatever you want, but you're doing sales. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. And I think that's
I never considered myself a salesman. It's like I'm selling myself, but never going out and selling a job. So I never really looked at it like that. Whenever somebody call and say, "Hey, I need for you to look at a tile job," I never looked at myself as a salesman, even though I thought I was pretty darn good at it. To win somebody's trust. And again, with no way to back it up with the internet now, people go back and say, they type in a subject to see whether they believe what you were telling them, or who's this guy and who's the guy you're bidding against. So there's a lot of more information now that people can utilize, and the computer, in my opinion, has helped to a degree, and it's also hurt to a degree.
Oh, definitely. It's It'll be whatever kind of resource you turned it into. If you want to turn it into complete garbage, it's going to be complete garbage, right? You can get on there, you can have an ego, you can be a keyboard warrior, you can sit and fight with a bunch of other guys about the stupidest nonsense ever, or you can tap in and see that John Cox is doing some really cool stuff in San Antonio and say, hey, man, I'd love to talk about that. How do we help other guys be successful? Like those are your options, right? You can use it as a tool to better yourself, or you can use it as a tool to waste time on and be completely toxic with. But I think that's anything, I even without the internet, you could have gone and how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to go home and sit in front of the boob tube, or do you want to go and learn how to better yourself, right? You chose to study some books instead of rotting your brain in front of the next NFL game or whatever was on TV that could have been entertaining. So instead of spending 30 minutes there, you decided to put 30 minutes into yourself. And that's the key.
Yeah.
It's just how do you use the tools that are around you and make yourself, how do you improve yourself as opposed to remain the same or clam up and get worse?
But if you could see my messy office, I've got books everywhere because, again, even if I may not read it, I look at the pictures pretty well. Because, again, I want to expose myself to as much as I possibly can. And good about Facebook. You very rarely see me post things on Facebook because there's so many armchair critics out there that I go back and look at their profiles. It's like, you know what, dude, I'm not even gonna talk to you because you're not even in the same league. You're in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to engage in that. And I refuse to engage in that because it's not productive. Somebody wants to reach out, and ask something. I'll be glad to answer them. I'll try to help them in any possible way that I can, with what I, again, over the years of learning. But the books that I've purchased, they've been tremendous with, you have employees. I've had problematic employees over the years. And there's a couple of books that I put in there. I think one of them was This Horse Doesn't Drink from the Same Trough. And what do you do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, do I fire him? Maybe he's a producer, but he may be a poison to the other guys.
Yep.
And so it's real important to identify that. Okay, let's take it from a different angle. Let's use this philosophy, and try to get this to turn around. Some guys are recoverable, some aren't, and that's something I learned over the years. But again, tapping into somebody else's knowledge that's already gone through it. That's what I cling on to. Over the years, I always had friends that were older, and even in TCA, there were guys that were, 20, 30, 40 years older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And, people say, well, those are old guys. What are you going to learn from them? Well, yeah, they've already been where I'm going. And so why should you discount them just because when they have such a vast amount of knowledge that and are willing, most of them, for the most part, are willing to give because they're in this kind of like me. I mean, they want it. They want to help and help the industry. I want to help the industry. I want people to be profitable. I want people to raise their prices because I think that they're doing work too cheap, and they're doing work too cheap because they don't know how to do it any better than that. Mm-hmm. The guys that are out there doing bad work, we're not going to change those guys. They're I thought that was another thing with the economy going bad. All the weeds died, but as soon as the economy picked up, all the weeds grew back. So you think that they're going to go away and they're going to go away forever. Wasn't the case at all. What they did is they filed bankruptcy and changed their name, and now vendors are open to doing business with them because now they got a new slate to work off of. And that was another thing that just pissed me off to the max is, them, I paid all my bills when I may not have gotten paid for a job to a vendor. And then when a guy went bankrupt and opened up a new business, they gave him preferential treatment. It's like, what happened to my loyalty of what I did in
Mm-hmm.
paying you, and you want to penalize me because this guy, you know, uh, is starting fresh, and I, unfortunately, I was pretty vocal about it. Probably didn't get anywhere, but was vocal about it because I worked our fannies off that we never
Yep.
filed bankruptcy, never changed our name. And that's one thing I'll say this when people are considering going into business, you've got two different schools of thought of, what do you name your business? Do I
Okay.
name my business after myself, or do I name my business ABC Tile Work? Well, there's advantages of doing it yourself, but a lot of times as you get in the business matures most, later, people ask, "Where's John Cox?" John Cox. I had a lady one time said, "If John Cox is not on my job, you can't do this job." And
Oh, yeah.
but with ABC Tile Company, they have no idea who's coming out there. But also with having a name, being what we've done and how we've gone about doing it, being in business, we've used that to our advantage. Where the name recognition, oh yeah, I've heard about you guys,
Mm-hmm.
and there's advantages and disadvantages. You have to weigh those out when you get ready to open up your business and name.
For sure.
Uh,
There's a lot to consider, and it's worth talking to people that have been in business for a while. I like we gotta wrap this up, but I like that you've pointed out twice now when you're talking about the books how you may not have read all of them, but there's probably still something you've picked up. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, I picked up a book, I got to finish it, or I started a podcast, I got to finish it. Whatever you're doing, you need one nugget. Whatever you're paying attention to, whatever you're trying to get something out of. You need one nugget, and if you go and apply it, you've done yourself justice, in my opinion, because you've done something to make a change and move yourself forward. And so you don't have to finish the book. If you get, I talk about it with the podcast all the time. If you have this on while you're working, because you should be learning while you earn, in my opinion, it's like going to college for free, and you only hear 10% of this. If you get one nugget out of the hour that John and I just talked for, that you can take and somehow apply to your business, you are that much further ahead of the person that's not listening to the show, because they're getting nowhere, and you're definitely further ahead than the person that's listening to the show and not acting on it. And so you take that and you do that every week, and you stack all those little nuggets on top of each other where you've actually applied them, and now you've got something that stands on its own after a year, and you can say, wow, look at all the changes I've made, right? It doesn't seem like a lot each week, but at the end of the year, you can look back and you've probably made a ton of changes and gotten a lot better. So I think that's a really important point.
That's one of my goals was to take pages that were important that somebody could use and take away
Mm-hmm.
immediately. That was part of why I was doing it. It's, if I wasn't going to do the whole book, I wanted to do like the contents. That way, if somebody wanted to read into it, they could always buy the book if I just gave them a little bit. But I was always trying to do highlights where, again, somebody could utilize in their business right now, today, right now,
Mm-hmm.
and apply it. That was my goal. And if one person from all the people that read those posts benefits, then it's mission accomplished.
I agree. That's perfect, right? If I can make one person better, then hopefully they can make one person better, right? We'll just keep passing it forward and try and get this industry stronger. And that's
Right.
what matters. Let's leave it better than we found it, and let's help other people succeed instead of holding everything back. John, is there anything that you would like to add that maybe we didn't hit on?
I think that pretty much covers it. Like I said, I've got, if you ever see me at a show, I'm willing to talk. Most people know me that I do like to talk. I do like to share. So don't be afraid to approach me wherever I am, because again, I feel like I'm approachable. I don't think that I'm any better than anybody else, but this business has been rewarding. It's been fun. And I love what I do. It's not work. I don't get up in the morning and say, oh, I got to go to work. I go to work saying, what's the next challenge and how am I going to deal with it?
Great attitude. And I actually, I picked up on that as I'm really big on like words and connotation. And in our initial conversation, you kept saying challenge instead of problem. And I've been working really hard to change how I'm trying not to say the word problem. So thank you. Like that was a big change for me to try and adopt that one. Cause I don't like saying customer. I like saying client. It's not a job. It's a project. Like there's certain, I don't like calling them helpers. I think they're apprentices because we want to turn them into something, and a helper can't go anywhere. So there's like little things that I try and use very specific words for every time. And that was, I picked up on that and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'll finish this. There was a book by a guy named Robert Schuller that he was a minister and built a crystal cathedral in Los Angeles, and I actually went to it before he passed away. That never got to meet him, but he was talking about building this church, and it was about positively thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people, you can turn anything negative positive, and it's how you think about it. That's why I was thinking, challenge. A challenge is the same word as a problem. It's just wrapped up differently.
Yeah.
But he went to different people and said, okay, how can I raise $16 million? I can get one donor to give me $16 million, or I can get 16 donors at $1 million. And it did this breakdown. And it's like, there's ways that, you can get around things. And I tell every one of my employees when they come up, I've got a problem. No, you don't have. What problem do we have? Well, I got to this point and stopped. And I said, okay, here's your solution. You come to me with a solution. Don't come to me with what you say is a problem. And there's ways to get around it. We can either go over it, we can go under it, we can go around it, or we can go through it. What is the best solution, and how are we going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Don't come to me and say, I've got a problem, and then think that I'm going to solve it. We're going to solve it together, and then we're going to move forward.
Love it. That's perfect. We're going to leave it right there, folks. That's great advice, right? This is how we're going to tackle things. And I think it's a great way to show that, especially when you have employees, if you want them to grow, you need to let them come up with the solution and you back them up, right? If you just keep handing them everything, then you're not training the next person to become a leader and then teach somebody else the problem solving skills. So that's beautiful. Let's see, what do we got here? We got a real quick word from Tice. Listeners, it's nearing that time again. Time to remind you that the International Surface event is returning to Las Vegas January 28th through 30th, 2025. Mark your calendars now. Registration is open, and you can get using the promo code, a free registration using my name, Kyle, Kyle. Whether you're an installer, retailer, distributor, or serve in another capacity within our industry, attending TICE is a solid way to expand your knowledge and networking base. You can also learn about the newest and industry-leading products by attending the show. Learn more by visiting the International Surfaces event page on Facebook or intlsurfaceevent.com. Get to the show, folks. It's a wonderful time. The networking. If you go for nothing else, go for the networking. But then seeing the products is definitely huge. And there's a lot of education there to get as well. John, thank you again. I very much appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and talk a little bit about your history, why learning's so important to you, and what it's kind of done for you, your business, your employees. And I very much appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
You're welcome. All right, folks, that'll do it for us this week. Make sure to tune in again next week and learn while you earn.